As the Australian Open marches onward down under, the conspicuous absence of one tennis titan continues to loom over the tournament. Like the rest of us, world number one and reigning men's singles champion Novak Djokovic is watching the first Grand Slam of 2022 from his couch after having his visa revoked and ultimately getting deported for refusing to comply with Australia's COVID-19 vaccination policy. As such, Djokovic's quest for a record-breaking 21st career Grand Slam title is on pause until at least May. But considering how much conviction he has in his anti-vax leanings, and in light of how many countries are tightening up their vaccine requirements amid the Omicron surge, Djokovic could be waiting an awfully long time to get his next shot at history. So what went down in Australia exactly? And what comes next for the tennis legend increasingly referred to as NoVax? Let's break it down. Sit back, relax, and take this in. Djokovic's vaccine skepticism is nothing new. Early in the pandemic, he said unequivocally that he is opposed to vaccination. And while he did walk that back a bit in the ensuing months, his highly public and ultimately unsuccessful legal battle in Australia made it clear that Djokovic remained staunchly opposed to getting the COVID vaccine, at least. Were he fully vaccinated against COVID after all, he would be out there competing for his 10th career Australian Open title. Instead, though, Djokovic tried to enter the country, which has a strict vaccination policy for visitors, on a medical exemption that was ultimately rejected by border officials amid public outcry and questions over the legitimacy of that exemption. Djokovic's visa was cancelled and he was ordered to leave the country, but he instead opted to appeal and was detained in a Melbourne hotel as he awaited judgment from a federal court. And though it appeared for a moment that Djokovic would successfully circumvent the vaccination policy when a federal circuit court ordered that his visa not be revoked, the immigration minister promptly stepped in and canceled his visa for a second time on the basis that it was in the public interest to do so. Specifically, the government felt that allowing Djokovic to enter the country and participate in the tournament could incite anti-vax sentiment. Time to pack it in, right? Not for Novak. Instead, Djokovic also appealed that decision, which his lawyers characterized as irrational, only to be rejected by a tribunal of 3 federal judges, who upheld the immigration minister's ruling. And so, on the eve of the tournament, the saga concluded when Djokovic was finally deported. He headed back to his native Serbia and was replaced in the men's singles draw by Salvatore Caruso. As fate would have it, Caruso was swiftly defeated by fellow Serb Miomir Kecmanovic, who had vowed to avenge his compatriot's deportation with his performance. But while the ATP lamented Djokovic's absence as a loss for the sport, it's also something they might have to get used to. The Australia incident showed that Djokovic would sooner forego opportunities to further distinguish himself in tennis's history books and risk damage to his legacy than get jabbed. That doesn't bode well for his chances of participating in the French Open, the next Grand Slam on the calendar, which is scheduled to get underway in late May. Recently, France passed a new law requiring everyone over the age of 16 to show proof of vaccination to enter a host of public spaces, including sports arenas, and the French sports ministry stressed that no exemptions would be made for professional athletes. Djokovic's unvaccinated status could also prevent him from participating in the US Open this summer. Under the US's current mandate, foreign nationals must be fully vaccinated and show proof of vaccination before boarding a flight bound for the States, with minimal exceptions. And there could be complications even if he does find his way into the country. New York City, which is where the US Open is held, requires proof of vaccination to enter indoor public spaces. And, well, sometimes they need to close the retractable roof at Arthur Ashe Stadium, turning it from an outdoor venue into an indoor venue. Meanwhile, regardless of his vaccination status or the pandemic's trajectory, it could be a long time before Djokovic is allowed to compete for another Australian Open title. Under Australia's immigration laws, Djokovic can't be issued a new visa for 3 years as a result of his deportation, although the Prime Minister did note that he could be issued a new visa and allowed into the country under the right circumstances. In any event, Djokovic is a big old question mark for the time being, and will likely stay one so long as he refuses to get vaccinated. What remains to be seen now is whether his refusal to get vaccinated will ultimately prevent him from racking up the most Grand Slam singles titles in men's tennis history. Remember, Djokovic is currently tied for the record with Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer, both of whom are still active. What's undeniable, though, is that this incident is a blight on Djokovic's legacy, one that tennis fans, and particularly Australian tennis fans, will likely never forget, no matter how many Grand Slam titles he wins.